32 degrees sounds harmless. Water freezes there, sure, but your engine should be fine, right? That's the trap. Most drivers think the danger starts at sub-zero, some dramatic Minnesota nightmare where the starter can barely turn. But a lot of oils don't need Arctic weather to start giving up. They just need one cold soak, one overnight park, and one rush morning where the cam lobes, timing chain, rings, and valve train are asked to work before the oil fully gets where it needs to go. That's where the money leaks out. Not in a smoky cinematic engine failure, in tiny bites. Scuffing, fretting, surface fatigue. The kind of wear that quietly turns a healthy engine into an oil burner at 140,000 miles. At startup, the engine is not living in the nice, safe world of full fluid film where parts ride on a pressurized wedge of oil. It's in boundary lubrication, or mixed lubrication, if you're lucky. That means the peaks of the metal surfaces are closer to touching, and the anti-wear chemistry has to hold the line until flow catches up. Tribology people have argued for years about the percentage, but machinery lubrication sources still point to startup and shut down as the phase where as much as 70% of wear can happen. And even Ural notes that up to 75% of lifetime wear is tied to startup. The number can move, the wallet hit does not. Then it clicks. Collapsed at 32 degrees doesn't mean the bottle turned to candle wax in the garage. It means the margin shrank. The oil got thick enough, slow enough, or weak enough under load that the protection window at startup got longer than it should be. A few extra seconds does not sound like much until you realize your engine may see thousands of cold starts in its life. Multiply a tiny insult by every morning commute, every school run, every coffee stop, every remote start session where the oil is still heavy and fuel is washing the cylinder walls, and suddenly cheap oil isn't cheap anymore. This is where people get fooled by the label. They see 0W20, 5W30, full synthetic, and assume the story is over. It isn't. Two oils can wear the same grade on the bottle and behave very differently in the first minute after startup. One can crank easier, pump faster, and leave a more durable anti-wear film on the high-load parts. The other can technically pass the grade, yet still spend more time acting like cold honey trying to move through a straw. Same number. Different morning. That difference is not trivia. That difference is chain stretch, cam polishing, and the slow creep toward oil consumption. Lake Speed Jr. and the Speedy Agnostics crowd have hammered on this point for a while. Startup protection is not just about oil pressure, because pressure is only part of the story. You can build pressure and still have lousy film strength at the exact contact point where a follower is trying not to micro-weld itself to a cam lobe. Simple, right? Wrong. Drivers see the dash light go out and think the danger is over. The dash light is telling you that some pressure exists somewhere in the system. It is not telling you that the last loaded contact in the valve train is happy. That's why lab tests matter, only if you know what they do not tell you. Take the Sequence IVB wear test. It was built to measure valve train wear under low temperature operating conditions using a Toyota 2NRF engine and repeated short cycles. That matters because it gets closer to the kind of stop-and-go, low-temp, repeated start misery modern commuters actually create. But even that is still a lab. It is clean. Controlled. Repeatable. It doesn't include your half-plug PCV valve, your cheap filter with a lazy anti-drainback valve, your 5-mile winter commute in Chicago, or the fuel dilution from idling in the school pickup line. The lab gives us a baseline. The street writes the repair bill. And this is where the 32-degree test gets interesting. At freezing, bad oil does not need to fail spectacularly to expose itself. It only has to lose the race in 3 places. First, cranking drag. If the oil resists motion more, the starter and battery work harder and oil takes longer to circulate. Second, pumpability. Can the pump actually grab and move that oil cleanly through the pickup and galleries before the loaded surfaces start rubbing? Third, film survival. Once the oil arrives, does the anti-wear package and base stock build a sacrificial layer strong enough to stop scuffing and adhesive wear? Lose one of those battles and the engine notices. Lose all 3 and the owner notices later. Think about it like this. Viscosity is not just thickness. It is timing. It is how fast protection shows up. Too thick when cold, and the oil behaves like refrigerated syrup. Too thin under stress, and the film shears down where the load is worst. The sweet spot is not thickest is safest. That myth has cost a lot of engines their timing chains and a lot of owners their fuel economy. The right oil is the one that reaches the parts fast enough at startup and still keeps enough body under heat and shear when the engine is loaded. That's why a well-built 0W or 5W synthetic can beat a heavier oil in the real world even though heavier feels safer in your hand. Blackstone's used oil reports back up the bigger pattern from the street side. They keep reminding people that viscosity, contamination, fuel dilution, coolant leaks, and insolubles all change how well an oil protects over time. In other words, the oil you poured in 5 months ago is not the same oil that's trying to save your cam on a cold March morning. If you do short trips, your oil may be carrying more fuel and moisture than you think. That milky goo under the cap, that is not just ugly. That is a sign your oil is spending too much of its life cold and contaminated. Tell me your mileage, your commute length, and whether you've seen the milkshake under the oil cap yet, because that changes the oil choice more than brand loyalty ever will. Now add the filter to the crime scene. An engine can have a decent oil and still suffer ugly starts if the filter's anti-drainback valve is weak. That little rubber flap decides whether the galleries stay primed or empty back into the pan overnight. If they drain back, the next start is drier than it should be. That means more noise, more chain rattle, more valve train contact in the mixed lubrication zone, and more time before a full oil wedge forms. People will spend 40 grand on a truck and then buy the bargain bin filter that lets the top end wake up thirsty. That's not saving money. That's financing wear. Now let's kill another myth. Warming the engine forever at idle is not some magic shield. A little stabilization time is one thing. 10 minutes of cold idling is another. While you sit there, the oil warms slowly, fuel dilution can increase, and combustion byproducts keep loading the crankcase. The better move for most modern engines is to let oil pressure stabilize, then drive gently until oil temperature comes up. Not coolant. Oil. Coolant lies early. Oil tells the truth. That first couple of miles is where discipline pays. Hammering the throttle on cold oil is how you turn a startup problem into ring wear, bore polishing, and chain tensioner complaints. So which oils collapsed at 32? The ones built to meet the number on paper but not leave much cushion beyond it. The ones that look fine on the shelf, then get lazy when cold, shear down fast, or rely on a formula that barely hangs on once it's contaminated by fuel and moisture. The winners are usually not the oils with the loudest label. They're the ones with better low temp rheology, stronger base stocks, stable viscosity improvers, and anti-wear chemistry that stays active when the engine is living in that ugly in-between zone before full film lubrication takes over. That's why the real debate is not premium versus cheap in the store aisle. It's total cost of ownership versus the illusion of savings. Here's the brutal math. Saving 20 or 30 bucks per oil change means nothing if it costs you a timing chain job, a set of phasers, turbo coking, or a quart every 800 miles at 120,000. Engines don't usually die because of one dramatic mistake. They die from repeated low-grade abrasion and deposit buildup while the owner thinks they're being good enough. Good enough is expensive. The chemistry either buys margin or it doesn't. And before somebody says, my engine has made it this far on bargain oil, sure, some engines are forgiving. Loose clearances, mild cams, easy service, long highway runs, warm climate. Can hide a lot. But take a modern direct-injected turbo engine with tight ring packs, a timing chain, variable valve timing, and a driver who does 6-mile trips in winter, and now the oil choice matters a lot more than internet bravado admits. Tell me what you drive, what viscosity the cap calls for, and whether your mornings are mostly short trips or long highway pulls, because that setup decides whether you need maximum cold flow margin, stronger deposit control, or both. My verdict is simple. At 32 degrees, the bad oils do not announce themselves with sludge or a seized motor. They expose themselves in delay. Delay in cranking. Delay in pump-up. Delay in film formation. And every delay is a chance for micro-welding, scuffing, chain wear, and ring-to-wall abuse. So the best cold start oil is not the heaviest, not the cheapest, and not the one with the prettiest marketing. It is the one that gets to the parts first, stays there under load, and still has the additive reserve to survive your real commute. Not just a clean lab cycle. That's the answer. Cold starts are where oil earns its paycheck. If your engine lives on short trips, freezing mornings, long drain intervals, or bargain filters, the wrong oil is a false economy. Buy for startup protection first, not shelf price. Because once the metal starts keeping score, it charges interest. And now that the oil argument is settled, there's a nastier question sitting one click away. Even if your bearings and cams are protected, why are your intake